Welcome everyone to the March Focus Series. The Focus Series is where we take 30 minutes each month to zoom in or focus on one specific conversation or topic in AssetMap with the aim to continuously elevate client engagement. Today's topic is guiding clients through complex decisions, so using drafts to explore options together with clients. Now, we like to always start with the why that sits behind that. And, in preparing for this presentation today, we saw a post on LinkedIn by a financial planner in the UK called Steve Conley. He added a post on LinkedIn and also linked to a white paper that he's written called From Product Advice to Wealth Governance, the Emergence of the Total Wealth Planner. We will share that with you after the session, the link to that, so you can work through it. It is really insightful. But what stood out for me is he talks about how financial planning has been really focused on what he calls financial capital, where we think about pensions or investments, products, knowledge, and how there are three forces currently reshaping financial planning all at the same time. And the three forces he talks about is the first one being AI. I know this is something we all hear about daily, but how AI is rapidly automating that technical advice side. But the other two that he speaks about is around how consumers now have access to more financial products directly. So before we could have to go through a planner or some sort of intermediary, now they have way more access directly. And he also spoke about life decisions are becoming more complex. And I think, given where we are in the world today and the rapidly changing environment, we can only imagine how those decisions and the impact of that is affecting clients. So they are becoming a lot more complex. And throughout the process, he talks about how this emergence of this total wealth plan, or how financial planning is evolving into three categories: that decision capital, human capital, and financial capital. And the thinking behind it is what really creates wealth or financial success is that human capital, just making those decisions, the right decisions along the journey for the client. And what sort of decisions is he talking about? But more around how planners will start, or not start, but more prominently be guiding clients in those decision-making process. Things like evaluating different trade-offs, navigating uncertainty, helping clients avoid those behavioral traps, and connecting money with purpose. So I think it's a really great, insightful paper to think about how it's evolving. I love that it's not talking about replacing aspects, but more how financial planning is changing to more this guiding clients through these decision-making processes. And it also makes me think about cash flow planning. So I think if we think about the last 5 or 10 years in financial planning, the emergence of cash flow planning and how that's become really a staple part of most financial planning engagements now, and what makes cash flow planning really so powerful is that it's almost like showing a client a mirror of, based on the decisions you've made up until now and the goals that you have, this visual is showing you your ability to meet that. And that opens up the space for engagement where we can invite the client in to say, well, what if we do things differently? What if we saved more or worked longer or spend less? What are the different options that we have? And whilst going through that together with the clients, they're sharing, well, let's see what happens if I do this, or if I sell that second property. Let's see the impact of that. And so we can, in real time, show them the impact of potential decisions or scenarios. And it's really powerful because it has a combination of us reflecting it in a way that's visual and engaging, but also in a way that the client feels invited in to collaborate with us. So the plan becomes their plan that they've put together with us, as opposed to our plan for them. And we know then that clients are far more inclined to stick to that plan and commit to it if it's theirs. So it really made me think about that, and why that works so well is very much in line with what Steve Conley is talking about in this white paper. But then in thinking about the conversations we have with clients during that client journey, they're not always cash flow planning conversations. Sometimes the conversations are around life transitions, the client's getting married, or there's a divorce, or perhaps clients about to retire, or there's been a death in the family. There's sometimes in these life transitions, there's so many moving parts all at once. How do we have those conversations? Or there's structural changes. We want to look at what sits in the limited company versus the trust versus the individual. Are there options or scenarios we need to be exploring there? Or it could be around consolidation. The client has many investments that are spread out that we want to try and make it more organized, consolidate more of those together. Or it could be a conversation around pre and post implementing. What are the actual things that we're proposing to take that step forward, and how do we reflect that in a way that's also engaging? And this is where we really think the feature in asset map drafts comes in. It's really most effective in these life transitions where it's complex, or these structural changes where you're looking at pre and post implementation, because it visually and tangibly shows a client the impact of different options or decisions that they can make. And again, it creates that space where we can have a conversation around it. So not just reflect it, but also collaborate around those changes and how we move forward.
Yeah, because it just strikes me. I mean, we talk about
Yeah.
consolidation, but sometimes it's also
Yeah.
about diversification. So in other words, sometimes a client might be over
Exactly.
concentrated. The business, the value might be tied up in a business, and yes. So in fact, I just realized it could also be the other way around for
That's so
consolidation.
true. Yes, like talking about how to diversify more across different asset classes. 100% agree. We've also enhanced drafts. So I'm going to jump into asset map now and just take you through what is drafts, how do you create them, how do you use them, and then we'll look through a few examples. So I'm just going to stop sharing and share again. And please, if you have any examples of how you've used it, please pop that in the chat and share with us. But I'm going to take you through it all if you haven't used it as yet. All right. So first step I want to talk through is just how do you create drafts for clients. Now, previously, if you were looking at a client, and I've just put quite a basic asset map together here, just client with some income, they've got a pension, he's got some investments, life cover, property and mortgage here at the bottom. So previously, you'd click on this colorful plus here, and you'd select drafts, and this pop-up would appear. But now with the enhancement, we've added drafts into, sorry, did I go off there, Benny? No, okay. We've added drafts. Okay, perfect. We've added drafts into the side panel. So now if you want to access or create a draft, you can simply click on this icon here at the bottom and you'll see drafts. So what is a draft? It gives us the ability to change the client's picture, to show options without actually changing their current picture. So if you think about, I want to show a before and after. I want to show if we do X, Y, and Z, this is how the change will be reflected. That is what we can use drafts for. So the first step in creating a draft is I'll click on drafts here and I'll select that I want to create a new draft. I'll then give it a name. It's going to call it proposed changes. And I can put in any notes about that particular draft that when I refer back to it, I can easily see this is the discussion points, or these are the things that I want to talk about in this draft. And then simply select create draft. You'll see now we've got this new orange border around the asset map, so it's very clear that I'm in draft mode. We can see on the top of this orange border the name of the draft, so I know which one I'm in. And we can also flip between showing and hiding the changes. But now, while I'm in this orange draft mode, I can change anything on the client's current picture, whether that's adding individuals, deleting investments, adding other financials, moving or changing things between members. I can now make all of those changes without it changing the client's current picture until I want to accept it and change it. So for example, if I want to have a conversation about maybe combining these two into an ISA, I can simply select that and say we're going to remove that. You'll see when I delete something, it's marked with a little red X in the top right to show that we are removing that. And then I can add to say, we want to add both of those into an ISA divider, and that will be £35,000 and create. Anything that I add will show up as a little plus. And I can also edit items. So maybe we want to move this personal pension. I can put a little note in here, move to company ABC and update. If I edit a block, you'll see it has a little pencil. If I remove something, it has this red X. And if I add anything, it has a plus. So now when I'm sitting down engaging with the clients, I can either hide and say, this is your current position, but what are the things we're talking about doing or the changes we want to make? And then I can show the changes and say, we want to combine these into an ISA. We potentially want to move this to company ABC. And I can, most importantly, open a conversation. So not only is it to show it to the client, make it really real and tangible, but now I can start talking around what would that mean for the clients? Are there impacts we need to consider? Is there tax implications? What do I need to inform the clients about that change? Okay. And if I want to close the draft, I just simply click close here and I'm back to my original current asset map for the clients. If I want to apply it again, simply click on drafts, click on the one that I want to show, and it will reflect the changes. You'll also see at the bottom here, it now tells you what the changes are. So you can quickly view, oh yes, this is what we're editing in this draft. And if I wanted to accept any of those changes, accepting it means that it will then change my current picture. I simply click on any color block that's changing and I accept or reject that change. Only then will it change the current picture, and only then will it reflect also for the clients on the client portal if they've got access to that. One other thing I want to point out here is if I'm in a draft, you'll see there's a little PDF button that appears in the top here. And that's if I want to generate a printout to talk through this draft with the clients. And this is what it will look like. So you'll see when I click on that PDF button, it shows me the asset map picture. And there's a watermark showing it is a draft. It's got the name of the draft in the watermark. And then again, shows what are we removing, what are we adding, and what are we editing. Okay. Let's take a look at a couple of practical examples. So here we have James Turner. We can see that, James is earning an income. He's got, a pension fund, some properties, including a holiday home, also has some cash and investments, and there is a trust as well. Now, let's say we've gone through a conversation with James and we've worked through the target maps and we've had the, planning discussion around, there is this mortgage. Do we want to potentially cover that with some life cover, or do we want to make any changements to the investments? One of the ways I can use drafts is to show the clients the impact of those decisions. Once we've gone through and made those decisions, let's talk about what that will look like on your picture. So if I click on this draft that I've created, immediately it's showing, here's the life cover we're adding, and we're also going to move that cash into an ISA. I can put in notes about what I want to talk about. Again, creating the visual, but opening the space for conversation around making that decision. Another great use for drafts is if I want to show structural changes. So let's say, for example, we can see that James has got this family trust, but he's also got this holiday home over here. And perhaps I want to have a structural conversation around moving that into the trust. And I know that's got, some implications around tax, etc. But that's the conversation I want to have with the clients. I can use a draft to illustrate that. So you can see how it moves from there to here. I can hide or show. And it could be one or multiple investments. And then I can open up a conversation around, whether or not that's tax efficient, or whether we should be making other changes, or what is the goal, or is there fears behind that for the clients? Is there emotional connections to that? But it gives me the space to have those conversations. So that's on implementation or structural changes. I also want to talk through in this example where we can look at more consolidation, or Benny, as you said, diversifying, that could be an option as well. But if I want to have a conversation with the client around combining, let's say in this case, retirement funds, Drafts is a great way of just illustrating that, to say, we actually want to take all these three and move them either to a SIP or whatever is appropriate for that client. And again, I can talk through, what sits behind that for the client. Maybe, one of those is the retirement pension fund they've had since they started working and they want to keep it like that, or there's limitations or restrictions of why we can't consolidate or could consolidate. This gives me that opportunity to share that with the clients, have that conversation, collaborate around the answer. But for the one change that I think, where target maps where drafts really shines is in those life transitions, where there is a lot of changes happening at once. Good examples is, if there's potentially a death in the family, just being able to show what happens first, what's going to happen next, what's going to happen straight after that. I can do it in one draft, or I could have multiple drafts down the side just showing here's step 1, step 2, and step 3, and flip through the impacts and what is going to happen, creating that comfort and understanding of what's coming next. And similarly, if we think about retirement, from a cash flow point of view, we can answer the question of, do we have enough, or do we need to make changes in order to have enough, or what sort of income can we expect from the client or for the clients? But then when it comes to what does that actually mean when we're retiring tomorrow? What is going to change? What is going to shift? Drafts is a great way of really making it tangible and real for the clients. So for example, here we have Margaret. She's earning currently an income of £48,000 a year. She's also got some rental income. She's got these different pension funds that she has. She's got some group life cover through the employer, as well as personal life cover. She's got an ISA and a discretionary investment and some properties below. Now I want to show, if you retire tomorrow, what is that picture going to look like? You can click on that or create that draft to show it, and then talk through it systematically to say, well, first step is we're going to combine these pension funds into one, and we're going to draw from that pension here. You're also going to start getting the state pensions, that'll kick in as well, and you're going to be receiving rental income that continues, but your employer income is going to fall away. And what's nice here as well, we can also look at, what is my total income per annum going to be? If I hide changes, we can see, so we're going from £58,500 to now getting £47,000. Reiterating and clarifying that. What's going to fall away? That group life cover is going to fall away, but your personal life cover is going to remain. And we can use it to show other changes. For example, the discretionary fund. We had that discretionary fund, but now we're going to relabel that. That's our travel fund. That's where we're going to get funding from for all of your travel requirements. But as you can see, just showing it like this, I can talk through the steps. So we think from the client's point of view, they can see, okay, this is going to fall away. That's going to stay, especially when there's lots of changes happening at once. It's really important to give the client the space and make sure they're on the same page and understanding what that picture is going to look like post-retirement. Right. So those are the different scenarios where I would use drafts. I know some of you are using drafts already and maybe have your own scenarios. Please share that with us. We'd love to hear how you're using it. I also want to talk a little bit of how drafts and client portal connect to each other. So let's say here with Margaret, we want to give Margaret access to the client portal. To do that, I click on Margaret. She opens up here on the side, and right at the bottom, we see Client Portal. Now, remember with Client Portal, when you grant someone access to it, you decide how much the client can see. So what is it that they can see and what they can do on the Client Portal. And one of the options we brought out is that you can give clients the ability to suggest changes, to let us know what's different in their life. So let's say for Margaret, I want to give her that permission to suggest changes. I'll simply select that here and create the invite. That then creates a link that I can share with Margaret. She'll be taken through initially a registration process where she'll verify her email, create her own password, but that's a once-off process. And from that point onwards, she can log onto the portal at any point in time and view it and make changes depending on the permissions that you've set. Okay. One thing to note with the client portal, when you give a member of a household access, they have access to the entire household. So they'll be able to see all the members within the household. So that's just something to bear in mind. And also right at the bottom here is this little blue arrow, which lets me preview. If I give Margaret access now, what is she going to see? And that's important. You know, we always want to know when the client logs in, what is it going to look like? What are they going to see? So I can click on that blue arrow and I can select preview. And then it allows me to sort of log in as if I am this client. Okay, so I'm logged in on the client portal as Margaret Hughes, and this is what she would see. So she can see her map here. There's also some key financials, and there might be more tabs down the side here, depending how much you've given the client access to. But because I've given Margaret access to suggest changes, she can also make suggestions and edits. So she can also add members, add entities, add different financials. She can edit the amounts. Maybe she says, you know, my income is now up to 50,000 per annum, or my rental has come down a little bit. It's now sitting at exactly 10,000 per annum. She can make those edits and additions and changes just like we did in drafts. But it doesn't automatically change the current picture. Like drafts, it is suggestions and you can view it and decide what to accept or reject. If I want to exit that client preview, I simply click on the picture here and exit preview. That then brings me back into Asset Map as the financial planner. You'll see right at the top, it says there's 2 changes that the client has suggested, and I can now select to view those changes. And what you'll see now is with this draft change, it actually shows it to me in that same view. So I can see I'm in the client portal suggest draft. I can see what changes the client has suggested, and I can see it here on the bottom as well, exactly what has been altered. If I then want to accept or decline a change, I simply click on it and I can commit that change or reject that change. Only then will it change the picture on my side and update it on the client portal. What's nice about this, I don't have to make that decision now. You know, perhaps I'm going to be engaging with the client soon and I want to work through it with them and have that conversation. I can always close it. And when I want to open it again, I simply click on drafts, and there will always be one called Client Portal Suggest, where I can select and see any changes that have not been accepted or rejected as yet, and then have that conversation with the clients. Okay. Close there and stop sharing, and then just close it off. Yeah, so thank you again, everyone, for joining today. I think it's important to just think about, you know, again, how do we make those conversations, whether it's structural, whether it's life transitions, whether it's cash flow, you know, Asset Map using target maps, stencils, and drafts. It's great ways of bringing the client into that conversation, you know, giving them the space to engage, to share, we can collaborate and come up with the right decisions together. And Client Portal is really just an extension of that. You know, now that we can collaborate with the client digitally, even when we're not sitting in front of them and engaging, they can be adding suggestions, we can be adding suggestions, and work through that together. So we always say it's more than just a feature. It's really about creating this bridge between the client's current reality and future opportunities. Thank you, everyone, for joining today.